Welcome to Her Fantasy Football. We're into week 8, and we're going to go matchup by matchup to help you set your lineups. So feel free to listen to the whole 90 minutes. It's going to be awesome. I'm your host, Courtney Kirby.
And I'm Ashley Williams.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
Woohoo! Get them out of your lineups, people. The New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. Get them out. They're on bye week 8.
I really wanted to play Eli this week.
Oh, I know. I don't blame you.
Hey, you might. I'm talking about him later on.
You are not.
On the bye week?
Yes, but no. Get excited.
Get excited. I am excited. That actually really excites me. I'm very excited. I don't have to talk about him this week. So cheers to that. Cheers. It was kind of a crazy week 7. I don't know about how you guys feel, but some disappointments. A lot of surprises, but it was good. It was interesting. Make sure to hop over to herfantasyfootball.com. We do our rankings every week and some articles on every single team. Also, check us out on ESPNW, where we have a video and our 10 predictions of the week. We're also on Twitter at herfantasyfb. If you have any questions, concerns, or you just plainly want to yell at us, we're there. We can listen to you. Don't ask about Sankey, though, because we don't like him. That's all, right? That's it. That's the only one, really. That's it.
We just can't tell you to start him.
It was so funny. I got home, and it was either that night or the next day. My husband, Tim, was like, gosh, why do people keep talking about Sankey? I was like, did you just listen to our show? And he's like, no. What do you mean? I was like, we just said that. Stop asking us questions about Sankey. He's like, yes, I'm on the same page of that.
It's bizarre.
Although your husband offered me like the biggest bullshit trade ever.
Oh, he offered everybody a trade that same day. He's like, I was really bored at work, and I just thought I'd throw it out there. He's offered Brandon like several, but
I was kind of surprised he didn't like have a Sankey thrown in there, because he threw in Vincent Jackson and Josh Gordon for LaShawn McCoy. And I'm like, come on, at least throw Sankey my way.
Yeah. His was I have Dez and Charles, and he offered me Jordy, Vincent, and Gordon. I was like, I need a running back. No.
I was trying to trade Josh Gordon. Come on.
Yeah, I know. I love it too. He finally dropped AP, which I was very proud of him for doing.
Oh my goodness, we were wondering. We kind of had almost like a bet going, Carson and I, about when Tim was going to finally drop AP.
It was very emotional for him. I think that my husband's been with AP since the beginning, and it was a big deal for him to finally be, throw in the towel if he's not coming back, But
he did what he needed to do. He went through couples therapy. He tried.
He tried. He
everything.
Did. He really did. Yeah. So it was time now. It was definitely time.
It was time.
Well, the Denver Broncos don't have much time because they are facing the San Diego Chargers in Denver on the Thursday night game. I can't believe it. 3-day turnaround. Bam.
Yeah, I am so sick of the same teams being in primetime, and even though I'm a Denver Broncos fan, can we spread the wealth? It's just boring. Like, I love watching Peyton Manning. I do it on my own time, but I kind of think, gosh, if I wasn't a Broncos fan, I'd be so annoyed. Them and the 49ers, they're always in primetime. I don't understand.
I know,
outrageous.
But it's so fantastic this week because whenever they are in primetime, then I can just watch Red Zone all day long. But when they're in like a 2 o'clock slot, then I watch the Broncos and I have to record Red Zone, then find time to slot in 7 hours of football in addition to football.
I do the reverse. I watch Red Zone, and I end up missing the majority of the Broncos game because I feel the same way. We're selfish, so we're Broncos fans. So we're just like, please put them on prime time so we can watch Red Zone.
But I agree. It'd be annoying if you weren't a Broncos fan.
I think one of my favorite things about Her Fantasy Football is that you guys talk in Mountain Time. I think we're the only podcast.
That's true. We do talk about it.
I was like, 2 o'clock? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
What
so,
up, Middle America? Yeah, it's 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock kickoffs, Brandon.
Right.
Well, for the
Right.
later
I know
game.
1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, but I'm into you guys.
11 and 2, baby.
All right. All right. So.
But good correction for all of our East Coasters out there and West Coast. Yes, we're talking
They're all
Mountain
like 2
Time.
o'clock. Did they
Yeah.
push back the games this week?
Well, the Chargers are
Anyway.
going down an hour, so they're actually, what do we got? 11. They're 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
10 and 1. So they'll be up an hour here. There we go.
It's going to be an
All right.
interesting game.
Well, I'm one of the late people, but I am excited about this Westy game. Okay, so San Diego Chargers, Phillip Rivers, play him if you got him. We got him ranked number 5. I got really into our rankings this week. I realized that I pay attention to our rankings after our show, so I decided to do it before the show, and it's changed my life, you guys. This is gonna be very exciting. So Phillip Rivers, although I do quarterback rankings, so that wasn't really a mistake.
Yeah, it's like that changed your life, reading your own stuff.
Some of them I was like, I don't
How
agree with this.
pompous. You know,
I know.
my running back rankings change my life every week, too.
My rankings are amazing. No, but I was literally like, oh, this is interesting. I disagree with this, and it's my ranking, so I should go and change it. But anyway, it's good stuff. So last week was Rivers' worst week. He only completed 17 passes for 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interception. But you know what? It's going to be fine. Everyone gets a bad game. Moving on. And yes, the Broncos have the 1-2 punch of Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. But he's going to have to go toe-to-toe with Peyton Manning. And I think he enjoys the challenge. So look for a bounce back. Brandon Oliver was also his his worst week last week. Lots of weeks here. There's a trend. It wasn't a good week for anyone, really, for the Chargers. Kansas City came to play. They were just not going to let the San Diego Chargers and the Broncos walk away with the division. We'll get into that later. So he only rushed for 67 yards and caught 2 passes for 11 yards. It was an off game, but once again, you know what? He gets a ton of touches. You know, I wouldn't worry about it. Antonio Gates must start. He was the only stud of last week, frankly. Gut calls all the wide receivers again. So none of them were very impressive last week again. But Keenan Allen actually fared the best with 58 yards off of 6 catches, which is not great. But if you're in a PPR league, that was 11.8 points. So, but just to let you know, Chris Harris, the cornerback from the Broncos, has only allowed 21 yards on 15 targets since week 4.
Tough.
Yeah.
I like Harris.
So that's what I'm saying to that. So also benchwarmer San Diego Chargers defense. Once again, there's a rule. Rules are rules. Never start a defense against Denver.
Never.
Play your studs and never play defense against Denver. I like that. That's good.
I'm just excited for this game because this game is going to be such an offensive powerhouse game. Because you're right. Phillip is going to show up and he's going to play. Because he, you know what, you can say what you want about Phillip Rivers, but Phillip Rivers is actually a big-time game player. He steps up in the big games. That's why he always steps up in December, right? Because things are on the line and he will deliver. So I'm actually excited for this game. Your play if you got him are obviously Peyton Manning. Why? Because he's the best quarterback of all time, as decided this week on Sunday. / 10 years ago.
I love
for
that
me,
you
but
were
you
just
know,
like-
we'll go with
You
that.
put it out there on ESPN.
I'm wearing my Broncos shirt and I'm wearing my Broncos earrings to represent Peyton Manning's record-breaking game on Sunday.
This is a
Yep.
fantasy podcast, right?
It is a fantasy
Fine.
podcast. And
But-
you know what? He's fantasy
Broncos-
gold.
No, I agree. All in.
It's a given. It's a given. As are Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. I would like to say that I called it, that it was going to go to Demaryius Thomas.
Good job.
Girl,
That's such a sentimental pick.
No, you didn't. You said Julius, Ashley.
No, I said Demaryius.
You said
did I say
Julius.
Julius? Did
I
I?
said Demarius. I won.
You won.
Oh my god.
Not as fun. Not as fun.
I said
Not
Jacob
as fun.
Tanami.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Because you're like, I think it's the other tight end. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought I picked Demarius.
You can both be right. It was a Thomas.
Either way, you're playing them. And you're playing Ronnie Hill. Okay, because here's the thing. Monty Ball should be panicking right now.
Of course he is.
Legitimate panic mode. Because Hillman has scored 11 points and 21 points as the starter, right? He's the third highest scoring running back and looked fantastic. This was last week. And Monty Ball certainly has not done anything to solidify his starting position. So he has only scored 23 total points in 4 games, and that's only 2 points more than Hillman scored in 1 game last week. I am telling you, Monty Ball, it's not pretty for you right now, buddy, because Hillman's looking solid. And this will be another good week because the Chargers have allowed 237 yards to opposing running backs in the past 2 weeks. So he's coming off a 2-touchdown game. He's feeling good. I like Ronnie Hillman a lot this week. Julius Thomas, I also have on my must-starts, and I get that he had an absolutely terrible game last week. He only got 2 points, which is shocking, to say the least. But the Chargers have given up the 3rd fewest points to tight ends, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, but he's going to have a bounce-back week. Put it out of your mind. Julius Thomas is still one of the best tight ends in the league. You have to play him. My gut call is Broncos defense. So I don't feel good about the Broncos defense this week because the Chargers give up the 2nd fewest points to defenses, only followed behind the Broncos who give up the least fewest points. So this is not a team you should actually. Yeah, you shouldn't start them against the Chargers. Let's just say what it is. But the pure fact of the matter is I've been telling you to bench the Broncos defense for weeks now, and they keep putting up points. And they were the 7th highest scoring defense last week, so maybe they'll surprise us again this week. You know, like Brandon said, DeMarcus Ware, and you've got, Von Miller. They're pretty legit. So
Yeah.
I got them in my gut calls. I don't feel good about it, but I can't argue with you if you decide to play them. And then Wes Welker. Do you guys think this is the turnaround? I mean, he had the deep ball threat, which is really interesting, as he's usually a slot receiver kind of guy, middle of the field guy, and they did a kind of a crossing pattern with Demaryius went for the slot and Wes Welker went for the deep ball, which is not usual. But this might be the turnaround week, right? Are we feeling better about Welker or no?
Mm-hmm.
I'm iffy with them. I think that it's he's a boomer bust player at this point.
I think he's boomer bust too. And again, if you're PPR, it's a little bit better than not. But the Chargers get the 7th fewest points to wide receivers, so I don't love it. But I just, for some reason, feel like it might have been the turnaround.
I hope so, because I love Wes.
And I have no one on the bench because, again, you start everybody with the Broncos for the most part.
Start them all. Start them all.
Rules.
Rules are rules. Detroit Lions 5-2 with Atlanta Falcons 2-5.
So confusing.
So I flipped that around. I got both of these teams here. Okay, so play if you got him, Joique Bell, and I've got Lions defense. Lions defense is the top defense in the league. You have to play them even when it's kind of a weird matchup. You just kind of have to. And Joique Bell's been consistent. I mean, he's not going out there. He's not, a top 10 back, but he definitely, fills the role certainly for an RB2 and a flex, no question. So in that sense, you're starting him. Okay. Golden Tate. Did we tell you or did we not to not freak out about him? And he came back and had a big, big game.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he's the 3rd highest scoring receiver. He pulled in 21 points. He had the most catches he's had in any game thus far this year with 10, and he had 154 yards and a touchdown. And I think, and this is a bold statement, but Megatron being sidelined may actually be the best thing that has happened for the Lions, in the sense that, hear me out.
I know this is a podcast, but my face is speaking.
Your face is saying it all. But what I'm telling you is that him being out 1 game, 2 games, whatever, but what it's doing is it's creating a situation where Calvin Johnson is not the only threat in the receiving core, which he really basically has been for the last few years. So teams, because Golden Tate is doing so well, they can't afford to double cover Megatron and leave Tate wide open. You can't, because Tate is solidifying himself as a legitimate threat.
I know this isn't really fantasy, but did you see the Golden Tate meme thing that happened? So supposedly Percy Harvin punched Golden Tate during the Super Bowl week. Did you see this?
No.
Last year? Yeah. So there's he has a little black eye, and this rumor came out as this Percy Harvin trade came down.
Right.
And one guy, a random guy with 200 Twitter followers, whatever, posted that Kermit the Frog meme where he's sipping on hot tea, and underneath it says, "And that's just none of my business," or "that's none of my business," kind of thing underneath. And so Golden Tate took a picture of himself sipping on tea and put it on Instagram. next to this guy's thing. Like, literally, it was so brilliant. He's, like, sitting on the stoop drinking tea with some friends. They all have little tea mugs doing the Kermit the Frog, it's none of my business move, basically. And it was so cool. I was like, oh.
Somebody's making a bold statement about Mr. Pessy.
I think I
like
really like Golden Tate.
I think I like it too.
too.
No,
Anyone
I
who's
would
going to come
definitely
to
like
frog jokes, I'm into.
But you have to
Intent
agree with
tests.
me that this is good that Megatron will not be considered the only threat for the Lions now. I do think it could open up the offense when Johnson comes back healthy.
Hopefully it helps Stafford for sure.
Yeah. So with that, we'll go to my gut calls. Corey Fuller. Who? Yeah. Exactly.
I didn't want to say that because I didn't want to sound dumb, but I have not been paying attention to Lions as much as I want to.
Yeah.
Defense.
I have to. And so even I was like, Corey Fuller, I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to write this down or I will forget all about you come outline time. But Corey Fuller, so here's his situation. He scored 10 points off 5 targets. He had 3 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. But the reality is he will have virtually no fantasy value for you when Johnson comes back. And he will only have fantasy value to you while Johnson is out if he finds the end zone, right? Because 44 yards is not going to do much for you. So the good news is that he was in for 88% of the snaps, so the potential is there if you need a flyer because he's just on the field so much with Johnson being out. Matthew Stafford I have in my gut call section because here's my issue is that unless you're in a 14-team league, realistically, you cannot play Matthew Stafford because he was the 15th highest scoring quarterback last week. He's the 13th highest scoring quarterback overall this season. You know, and Stafford has scored 15 points last week, and this was sadly his 3rd highest scoring game for the season. That just isn't going to cut it. So what is surprising is that quarterbacks that actually have more points in total, than Stafford and could possibly be available in your leagues is Joe Flacco, only owned in 56% of leagues, and then Eli Manning, owned in 62% of leagues. Both of them have scored more total points than Matthew Stafford. Something I don't
Wants
think
Megatron back. Yeah.
any of us could have said that. He's just, Anyway, think about it. Bench, Reggie Bush. If we review his points throughout the season, it's 5-2, 1 great week of 15, 5-4, 0, and 3. I think that says it all. You're not playing Reggie Bush.
That's great.
On to the Falcons. Play him if you got him. Absolutely nobody. There's nobody that I could tell you that you should absolutely start at all. Gut calls, I've got Julio Jones and Roddy White. White had 16 points off 100 yards last week. That was his highest scoring game. Julio is listed as questionable, is limited in practice on Wednesday. White has a lot more value if Julio is still touch and go, but Julio is a must start if he is given the green light. Either way, I don't expect a big week from them anyway because the Lions give up the 3rd fewest points to wideouts. So I don't really love either of them this week with the really touch and go Falcons team.
Should we just have a rule that you don't start people against the Lions?
Kind
Legit.
of, yeah. Because I also have Matt Ryan on the bench for that same reason. Like Ryan actually is like the 8th highest scoring quarterback for the year, but they've been so kind of inconsistent, and the Lions, stop quarterbacks. So that's not good. They give up the fewest points to quarterbacks, and then the Falcons running backs. We all know I'm going to go off on a rant on this one. So Anton Smith is still not being targeted enough. He only had 3 carries for 10 yards. Was only targeted twice in the air.
It's my classic Anton Smith freak out.
I can't handle you. Jacquizz Rodgers scored 1 point. Sorry. Anton Smith had 1 point. Jacquizz Rodgers had 0 points off 2 touches for 9 yards. And best of all, their savior of all saviors, Steven Jackson. Steven freaking Jackson. 8 attempts only got you 22 yards. 22 yards off 8 attempts for 2 points. I can't handle them. You're benching them all. I'm benching the entire Falcons team. I can't even do it anymore. Next week, I'm just going to not even address them.
People.
Not even address
bold statements. No defenses against Denver and no offenses against Detroit. And that's the deal. That's the deal. Well, you know what?
Something to think about.
It's exciting. This is the game of the week.
Minnesota Vikings game of the week
at Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Not even the game of the week.
I got a lovely text message from Brandon, but really her husband being like, "Why did you rank their defenses so high? Why? Because their offenses are so awful." It's going to be a very exciting game. I agree with you. You know who are playing for the Vikings, though, is McKinnon this week. He got back on track last week, rushing over 100 yards. You know, and he's out-touching the ball and outperforming than all the other backs, including Asiata. Sorry.
What's going on with that, Courtney? Like, what's going on with McKinnon and Asiata?
So,
What can we
listen,
expect with that?
I have Asiata on my bench. I don't even have him as a gut call. You know, he had his moment starting as the running back when Peterson was deactivated.
I kind of feel bad for him.
But sadly, the time has gone. McKinnon is such a strong
He's really good.
man. He's such a forceful runner that it just overpowers little Asiata, who's very handsome, by the way. But it just does. He just isn't strong enough, and the Vikings need a guy to, you know, defend, you know, help with the pass rush. They, you know, they also need he just is overall a better player than Asiata, unfortunately. They really need to use him like San Diego used Woodhead. But they haven't gotten there yet. So McKinnon's going to be your pick. So hopefully you've dropped Asiata for a better choice already. Minnesota's defense, I have them, you know, must start. They're playing against Tampa Bay. You know, I would do it. Last week they got 15 points against the Bills. And granted, the Bills lost half their team, but still, Tampa Bay gives up the fourth most fantasy points, so why not? They did. It's okay.
We'll get to the Bills, people.
And I just want to take a moment. Congratulations, Patterson, for his first touchdown of the season.
When everyone dropped you came through.
He still didn't come through. He only had 2 receptions for 9 yards total.
I can't clap for him. I can't clap for him.
He still was under 8 points. So it wasn't like, oh, it was just like, congratulations. You still should deserve to be on your bench. But I mean, I would still bench him, but only you know how desperate you are. So,
and you'd have to be desperate.
With that said, Greg Jennings is also a gut call. They're playing against the Buccaneers. I suppose really all of them are, except, you know, Teddy Bridgewater, he's still on the bench.
Rookie quarterback is tough.
Yeah, they're tough. It's just the offensive line for the Vikings is awful and injured, and it's just, you know, he gets sacked a lot. He really has no fantasy worth at this point. So sad, but it's what it is.
Dynasty Gold, though. I would say Dynasty Gold. I think they're committed to him.
I do think they're committed to him. Yeah, I agree. They're committed to him.
Courtney's like, well...
I don't know if I'd say Dynasty Gold.
I don't know if I would say gold. Maybe a shiny bronze.
I'd say bronze, yeah.
Okay.
A newly buffed bronze.
Legit.
Yeah.
That's legit. Okay.
He's on the podium, but he's not...
Yeah.
Right.
He's getting more
Andrew Luck. He's no Cam Newton. Okay.
Okay.
We got Tampa Bay Bucks, Ashley.
I was just thinking, like, he's more than like a participation ribbon.
Yeah, slightly. Slightly. Best effort.
The everybody wins ribbon. Yep.
Okay.
I can't give the Bucks one of those. They're not even getting a participate ribbon.
No.
Oh, I like them.
Oh, you would. I'm playing none of them. None of them are playing if you gotta.
Aw, Vincent Jackson.
They're all, but I said this team is like majorly in my gut calls, right? Mike Glennon's in my gut calls. He's actually played pretty well the last 3 weeks. He had 18 points, 15 points, and 18 points. So if you're in a 2-quarterback league, I like him a lot there. Realistically, you can't start him in a 1-quarterback league, but there's potential, right?
I agree.
Shiny, newly buffed bronze potential. Vincent Jackson is also in my gut calls. So Jackson has only had 1 great game in all reality, and the rest have been producing very middle-of-the-pack kind of numbers for you. And with Jackson's questionable status, he was limited in practice even after the bye week, which is not the best news for Jackson owners. It's pretty unusual that you'd still be limited in practice after a bye week. So I don't love that. I'm just throwing that out there. So you definitely need to watch your injury reports and make sure you're listening to what he is saying about his body. Again, players are pretty honest with you, so check out what he is saying. Mike Evans, on the other hand, the good news is that he is back, and he came back earlier than we anticipated from his growing injury.
Yay!
Yeah, he played the week before their bye. The bad news that he only would have scored you 5 points in week 6 if he had not scored a touchdown. And Jackson only scored 6 points in that week, so it wasn't as if Jackson was actually like taking all of these touches away. Just neither were really getting targeted all that much, and there wasn't a whole lot of production. So in my opinion, Evans can only be counted on as a wide receiver 3 or a flex at best. My bench, I've got Doug Martin, Bobby Rainey. The issue with this is that Martin is a starter, and he actually gets the majority of the touches, even though he's a starter. He doesn't really produce. He has yet to have a game over 45 yards rushing, and he only has 1 touchdown, which is crazy town for a starting running back.
We need to do like an investigative story on what happened to Doug Martin.
Seriously.
Go down there. We need to talk to him. We need to get to the bottom of it. Send him to a guru or some sort of like, cool place where they sit in teepees and talk it out.
No, they don't talk. It's silence for 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean,
silence.
Yeah.
45 yards, guys. He has yet to get over 45 yards.
Something's wrong. I don't know what it is.
Something is very wrong. But the issue with Rainey is that Rainey's actually more productive, but he's not even getting nearly the same amount of touches. And there's not the consistency there for you to feel confident putting him in your lineup. So I don't want you to ever, ever, ever think of these guys as anything other than possibly a flex. You cannot start them in your running back position and expect any sort of production. It just is what it is.
Wow. Buffalo Bills 4-3. The New York Jets 1-6. Brandon, have fun.
Okay, so this is a crazy game, and I'm going to try to pull it all together for everyone because these teams had huge changes last week, so we might as well go there. Buffalo Bills, let's start with them. So their Buffalo defense is still amazing. So we have them ranked number 2 this week. Because they've recorded at least 2 sacks in every game this season, and they're playing the Jets. I don't think we have anything else to talk about. And Sammy Watkins, we have him ranked number 15. And this may seem high to you, unless you've been paying attention. Sammy Watkins is the real deal. And for a rookie wide receiver, I mean, I remember we were all at the draft together this year, which was lots of fun, and if you live anywhere near Chicago, you definitely should go this year, and I'm going to try to convince my 2 sisters to go this year too. Chicago's a little harder for us because I don't have an apartment in Chicago, but the rookie Watkins continues to live up to the hype. And as long as he's not on Revis Island, which was his 1 bad week, and if Kyle Orton is behind center, he has caught 4 passes and 30 yards and has a 75% chance of catching a touchdown.
Yeah, love him. Sammy Watkins.
Oh God, Genevieve does it now, and it's so good. My 2-year-old, she goes, Sammy Watkins. Like the cutest thing, and like the 2 of them, they will do it over the dinner table, like every time, over breakfast, lunch, dinner, in the back of the car, driving anywhere. The 2 of them will like look at each other and they'll be like, you say it first. No, you say it first. And then somebody all of a sudden will be like, Sammy Watkins.
I think it's so fun that that's the name they've attached.
I know. I have got to get them jerseys because, Sammy, if you're out there and you're listening, I need 2 T's, 6 T's, please. Thank you. So funny.
So as far as the gut calls are concerned, bear with me, Kyle Orton. Hear me out.
I'm with you.
The Jets give up the absolute most points to quarterbacks. Sammy Watkins is awesome. Now, Kyle Orton has turnover issues. He tagged on for an interception and a fumble last week, so that's not good. But he's worth a look if you're one of those people that has Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins kind of situation. I think Kyle Orton against the Jets is a legit thing. Now let's get to the beef of the Bills. The running back situation. Unbelievably sad. Both C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson were carted off the field last week. It was unbelievable. C.J. Spiller is on IR, and I guess they did announce that he could come back week 16, which means he's out for the fantasy season. Okay?
Right.
You can drop him. That is the earliest he can come back is week 16. And you're not going to start him his first week back because he wasn't even producing when he was here. So let him go. Fred Jackson, on the other hand, suffered a groin injury and supposedly could be back as early as week 10. It's optimistic, but he's come back early from injuries before, and he's a robot, so anything could happen.
True.
Literally. Fred Jackson's a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Fred.
So, did you know that now Webster Dictionary is redefining literally as it can mean figuratively? People are totally ticked off about it. Anyway,
Really?
grammar nerds. Grammar nerds.
You
Grammar
would English
nerds.
major, you.
So I wanted to use it for fun tonight. So anyway, I'm not going to nitpick, but we have Bryce Brown ranked number 30 and Anthony Dixon ranked number 32. But here's the deal. There's kind of two feuding sides as to how this is going to shake out. I personally think Anthony Dixon's going to do better than Bryce Brown because Bryce Brown was a healthy scratch the first 7 weeks of the season. The whole season. So part of that is because Anthony Dixon also plays on special teams, which is why he was more valuable to the team at the time, and they already had 2 stud running backs. There was no reason to have another running back on it, so he was on the practice squad or healthy scratch. But we don't know what he can do. And he hasn't been playing with them. And at least Anthony Dixon's got a couple touches in. Now, I don't know how it's going to split up going forward, but I will tell you that they go up against the Jets this week, but then they have a bye, and then they go against Kansas City, and then the Jets again. And
Which
then,
do I have higher?
Bryce Brown. But some people think Bryce Brown is the one to pick, but I'm saying he hasn't even played yet. So, and they're going up against the Jets, who give up the 10th fewest points to running backs, and the only reason it's the 10th is because Brandon Oliver surprised the heck out of them and ran all over them that 1 week. Otherwise, they should be like number 4. They're really good against the run. So I'm not quite sure either of these guys are going to be fabulous, and I think they're going to share touches. So if I've gotten a lot of questions about who I should pick up, not pick up, I don't know. You might have better options, to be entirely frank. And I would rather pick up a really good receiver.
Sure.
I put them really close to each other because, again, it is so unknown, and I put Bryce Brown slightly higher just because he is a vet that has been proven in games before. But
That's what I'm saying, it's
like
debatable.
you said, he hasn't really ingrained himself in this offense, which is a little bit dicey. And again, it's the Jets, and I don't love that because the Jets are a good D. I agree with you, Brent. I think there's better options elsewhere.
It's pretty much interchangeable / I don't know if you want any of this. So that's that. Scott Chandler, we have ranked number 15 as a tight end. That's because the Jets give up a ton of points to tight ends. And Orton has targeted him 5 times every game. So if you need a flyer for a fill-in, I don't love him, but it's something to think about. The bench warmers, Robert Woods, you can't trust this guy for consistent fantasy production. And Mike Williams, he fell behind Chris Hogan, actually, as a starter. So it's a no-fly zone for Mike Williams. New York Jets. Chris Ivory, I have him in the play him if you got him.
Well, he had a good game last week.
Now, the Bills only give up the 2nd fewest points to running backs, but you know what? He played well last week, and I feel okay about it. He got 21 carries, 107 yards, and a touchdown, and caught 4 passes for 18 yards. His biggest game yet. Good for him. Now, let's talk about the meat of this matter, and then I promise you guys my other matchups are not like this. Eric Decker and Percy Harvin. So, WTF, Percy Harvin's now a Jet. Crazy.
Bananas.
So, and it's because he's stalking me, because I couldn't handle talking about him as a Seahawk. Like last week, remember I drew my line in the sand, like I refused to talk about this guy anymore, so he followed me to the Jets because I covered them too. I was like, no! So, anyway, why? Let's start with the positives. Harvin will get more work as a Jet. The Jets throw approximately 10 more times a game than the Seahawks. That doesn't seem like a lot, but for a guy like Percy Harvin's kind of specialty guy, it's a pretty big deal. And there are now 2 stud receivers on this team, which means that they're going to see a lot of man-to-man coverage. The bad news is that Geno Smith is their quarterback, and Vic is not any better. So that's happening. And still, I think it'll be good for both of them. And Buffalo gives up the 9th most points to wide receivers, so they could tag team this week. As far as gut calls, Chris Johnson, he had a good game last week, but buyer beware. I mean, the Bills are really good against running backs. I don't know if I'd go there. And for some reason, they decided, after getting Percy Harvin, that they would sign Jeremy Curley to a 4-year extension. Did you see this?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But Curly's been decent this year.
Not really.
Not really.
No, he was
Decent.
better last year.
Decent PPR, well, PPR-wise. He's getting some touch. He's getting looks. And
I
Percy
ranked
Harvin, I'm
him.
sorry, Percy Harvin has now been bounced around to 2 different teams. He's got personality issues, clearly. He's punching teammates.
But it's the perfect place for him to be with personality issues because they all have personality issues. So it's like just like
Yes
a huge
and no.
psych ward over in New Jersey, and I'm into it.
It is
My
a giant
prediction
psych
for the
ward.
game is that the Buffalo Bills are going to get worn down on defense because they're going to be on the field a lot. It's my feeling. When you lose 2 key players on your offense, and I just feel like
Yeah.
it's just going to be, I think the Jets are going to have a comeback game.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the Curly extension is called Percy Harvin Insurance.
Yeah.
And I think they are going to try to also get Curly the ball so that they can tell whether or not they need to extend, or if this is a 1-year deal for Percy Harvin, or if they want to keep going with him.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility he gets some looks. So he's in my gut calls, barely. Bench warmers, Geno Smith, clearly. But now that Percy Harvin's there, I would keep an eye on him. That they did need more, people, so maybe weirder things have happened. Jason Morrow also on the bench. The Bills are pretty decent against the tight ends, and he's a rookie. He's still figuring it out.
Figuring it out. Like the Chicago Bears, 3-4. What? At the New England Patriots, 5-2.
I'm totally going to bore you guys. No, actually, this is going to be a quick one. So Matt Forte is amazing. He is a badass. He's always been awesome. Continue. Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Listen, Alshon Jeffrey, other than the game where he was hurt, this was kind of his only bad game. He's been a top 20 play the last 4 weeks prior. Don't get greedy because last week was a heinous, heinous mess.
Right.
Brandon Marshall, it's a little complicated because he also went back into the locker room and screamed at Jay Cutler, and that's sad because, they're having troubles. It's unfortunate. But
The relationship's on the rocks a little bit.
A little bit.
the good news is that,
Just a tiff.
I mean, the kids are nervous, but I think that, they can make it work. The good news
counseling can make it work.
he was just quoted as saying, "I have a condo and Jay Cutler built it." That's his response to if they're okay now.
Right.
I'm sure he
Nice.
did. So, but here's the deal: the Patriots are pretty tough. Okay, they give up the second fewest points to wide receivers. So I don't know if Marshall and Cutler are going to make up this week, but I do know that they have a bye the following week, and then the week after that, it's going to be touchdown love. Okay, so just let it go. Let it go. And someone's going to be on Revis Island. One of them is going to be on Revis Island. I don't know who it's going to be. It may actually be Alshon Jeffrey because he's been pretty.
He has been
He's
producing
been very
a lot.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
So this might be Brandon Marshall's week, but that's a game plan thing that we can't quite predict. But
I think
putting
they'll
it
still
out there.
put him on Marshall, though. I don't know how you could possibly not put him on Marshall and put him on Jeffries.
It's crazy.
That's
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Especially when the
Marshall's-
couple just made up. He's going to want to go out and perform for his baby,
It's
Yeah.
true.
In that condo that he built.
That condo.
Martellus Bennett's number 10 ranked tight end. Listen, he hasn't been as elite as the first 4 weeks, but he's a tight end, so we cut him some slack.
It's true.
Gut calls, Jay Cutler. Another tough matchup. The Patriots give up the third fewest points to opposing quarterbacks. But up until last week, Cutler never scored less than 16 fantasy points in standard scoring. So let's all just take a breath. I mean, people are acting like
a lot
he's
of
the worst
questions.
fantasy bust.
A lot of questions
Right.
asking if it's time to drop or trade Jay Cutler, and I'm like, what?
No.
No.
Right.
My bench warmers are very
No.
clear. The Bears don't start a defense against the Patriots while they're hot. Once they cool down, we'll let you know. And then handcuff alert, Kadeem Carey. If you are a Matt Forte owner and you're winning your league right now, he's your handcuff to pick.
Nice. New England Patriots, play him if you got him. Tom Brady. Congrats, Brady. Another game over 20 fantasy points.
He's doing
it. He's doing it. Good, good. No interceptions. If his receivers could just catch the ball, he would have had even a bigger game.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of the Patriots dropping balls. It makes me so frustrated. I just want to slap them, Julian. Slap you.
It's on my
What
bench this
happened
week.
to
But that
him?
game last week is still one of my favorites. It's just
Who?
still one of my favorites. The Jets and the Patriots. It's like, it was so good, wasn't it?
I love those games.
The best bet game's the best.
And then the kicker misses the field goal.
Oh, it's so good. It's right
Oh,
there.
Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan is such a great coach, you guys.
He is.
Tears.
Tears.
That's what movies are made of.
Seriously. But you know what? Chicago gives up the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and so Brady might have another great game. He seems to be in his groove, so
Yeah.
I'm not upset if you play him. Rob Gronkowski, yes, obviously, second game in a row without a touchdown, which, I get, whatever, but it's Rob Gronkowski, so you're still playing him. Shane Vereen, hello. Belichick did not screw over all of our fantasy teams. Thank you. That was nice to see. A little surprise of week 7 from Belichick. 43 yards and 71 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Nice.
Yep.
He's a must-start in PPR links. He catches the ball too much. And if not, he's a running back 2 or flex. I mean, if I had him, I'd put him in. I'm okay with it. Not bad, not bad.
Yeah.
I know because he plays for Belichick, it's hard to feel confident about anything, but he looked really good, and I feel like he proved himself. So
Belichick is filled with lies.
lies.
I can't trust him with my fantasy team.
No,
Never.
no. That's why
Or
we
with
don't
my
draft
heart.
them. But to each their own, and you have him, so you're
Right.
playing him. But I did draft Steven Gostkowski. You're gonna play him. Last week he only got you 9 fantasy points. He still remains the number 1 kicker in fantasy. So, and Chicago gives up a boatload of points to kickers, so we're playing him. Julian Edelman, I have him in a bootload. I changed it to boatload.
It should be a bootleg. Awesome.
Listen, okay, Edelman gets the targets. He just has to catch the ball.
He's on my bench this week.
He had 4 receptions for 44 yards and had another 8 yards rushing. For some reason, he just can't do it. He just can't catch the ball. He's had only 1 game over 10 points in the last 5 games. That's concerning. I mean, he's a start because of the potential, but he's a bench because he's just not reliable. So he's the perfect gut call. Only you know how desperate you are.
Yep.
I mean, I'm starting him because I like his potential, but I can understand why you want to bench him. And there are a few guys that might have some fantasy worth this week, but Belichick is so unpredictable, so everybody else is on the bench. Brandon LaFell, Danny Amendola, and Tim Wright. Any of them could have 15-point games, but I can't tell you who, and I can't tell you who's going to zero out. So,
I was on
it's a risky take.
I was on SiriusXM last week, and I didn't know this, but all the guys on SiriusXM were all in on Brandon Bolden. They told everyone in America.
Brandon LaFell?
Brandon Bolden.
Bolden.
Oh, Bolden, really?
They were all in. They were like, oh, now that Ridley's out, Brandon Bolden's going to be the man. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then they just watched in horror all Thursday night as Bill Belichick was like, oh, yeah, fantasy people? Boom! He just blew it up. And I was like, no, you put a lot of faith because we didn't. I was like, oh.
That's a lot of faith in a guy that hasn't gotten a whole lot of touches this year. It's
But that's what I told
Belichick,
Bryce Brown.
so I get it.
It's bananas.
But Vereen's been playing and getting a lot of looks. Like with the Bryce Brown and Dixon situation, both the running backs are out, so it's kind of a crapshoot. But Vereen's been playing.
Well, one of the questions was, well, what do you think the chance is that Brandon Bolden is the number 1 rusher next week? And I said, 50. It's always 50.
You don't know with Belichick. You never know with
don't
Belichick. It's a scary, dicey thing. And that's why really everybody for them should be in gut calls every week.
The only person that is not a 50% going to play is Tom Brady. He's the only guarantee each week.
He's the only guarantee.
That's not true.
And even he was benched.
Gostkowski. Gostkowski as well.
Gostkowski is like sure's rain.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to a very even team here. We got the Seahawks 3-3 against the Panthers 3-3-1.
I'm sorry, are you impressed? Russell Wilson. Okay, I know that they lost last week, and it was bizarre because Russell Wilson literally could not have done a single thing more to win that game. He was the first quarterback in NFL history in 95 years to pass for 300 yards and rush for more than 100 yards in the same game. Hello, that's crazy.
Hello.
It's
I finally don't hate him.
And I'm putting back on his sweaters, if you know what I mean. So
I'm not on the sweater level. I'll maybe throw on a sweater vest. I'm not doing like a full sleeve sweater yet.
All I'm saying to you
close.
Is I'm repeating what I've been saying all season. He is an every week start. And Marshawn Lynch. Okay, first of all, there were rumors that Marshawn Lynch refused to get on the bus, the team bus, when he found out that his friend Percy Harvin was traded. His reps say that that's not true. But what is true is that he only carried the ball 18 times for 53 yards. And he caught 2 passes for 18 yards. However, yes, that's 2 games in a row that were kind of meh, but are you really complaining? You have Marshawn Lynch, and the rest of us are scrambling to find a running back, okay?
Have Doug Martin. Yeah.
Stop. Pick your battles.
Mm-hmm.
Gut calls.
But I dropped him down this week. A lot.
Dropped him to 8. It was really drastic.
I know, but everybody else had him at like the 4 range.
Right. You have 2 people in the top 8. Come here. I want to smack you. Just saying. Gut calls. Doug Baldwin. Okay, so we have him ranked number 25. I think we're being optimistic. He had 1 good game. It was last week. And yes, there's a possibility that this could continue. He caught 7 passes for 123 yards and a touchdown. But you know what? Before that, his best game was 56 yards. I think he's worth a pickup if he's available, but they're still a run-first team. So putting that out there.
Play him. Carolina's defense is awful.
It's true.
That's true.
It's true.
Do it.
But listen, we didn't rank any of the receivers because it's all so touch and go. But I can almost guarantee you one of them will have more points than Doug Baldwin.
But I will say
this
is why I've been so just sweater vest style of Russell Wilson. And I agree that my
Sweater vest.
very strong dislike of Russell Wilson has subsided. And I like him this year because I think he's actually turned the leaf. Because this year I will play him. Because prior to this year, the guy basically never threw any games even remotely close to 300 yards. He had a lot of games under 200 yards. But this year, he's actually throwing the ball. They're throwing the ball more, so Doug Baldwin has a little bit more upside. I agree with you. Let's, not do a full court press on Doug Baldwin quite yet. But there's potential more this year than there was last year.
Totally agree with you completely. I'm going to say something controversial that my dad almost freaked out on the phone. So he's like, I started Seattle defense again. And I was like, why are you still doing that? He's like, well, they're the best. I was like, last year.
No! Yeah.
So this was a conversation that I had. Seattle the Seahawks defense, listen, we thought they'd be good against St. Louis. They weren't. They should be good against Carolina, but they probably won't be. Your choice. Benchwarmers, Turbin. Obviously a bench warmer, but a handcuff alert. Cooper Halfett is on the team. He's the backup to the backup tight end, but he did score a touchdown last week, so I think you wanted to hear me say his name. But that's all you're going to get from me.
There it is.
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
One more time.
Cooper Halfett.
There it is.
Well, we moving to the Carolina Panthers. We have Cam Newton ranked 9th, and You know, Newton was back to his usual thing last week against Green Bay. You know, he is a boomer bust quarterback, and there are only a few out there, but he really is. So he doesn't seem to be perfectly healthy, and he doesn't have a bye until week 12, so that's not promising. But it is Cam Newton, so probably still have to play him. Calvin Benjamin. Benjamin did not disappoint. He had 61 yards and a touchdown. He is just blowing it up. I mean, he's just consistent for a rookie, which is so weird.
Him and Sammy.
Yeah.
Yep.
This will
So
be a
good.
good test. This will be a good test for him, though, going against Seattle, and we'll see if he can pull similar numbers as he usually does. I think he will. I'm playing him. And Greg Olsen, Mr. Reliable of the NFL. So nice to have one of you.
He's the number one tight end right now.
He's just amazing. He is just amazing. He's just 105 yards receiving. 10 points out of a tight end without a touchdown. Are you kidding me? Okay.
And he's
Yes,
ancient.
please.
I love it.
Yeah, and the Seahawks give up a boatload. I said it. Of points to tight ends, the third most in the league. So he is a no-brainer per usual. There is no gut calls, and if there's anybody else on the Carolina Panthers to play, go ahead and name them, but most likely they're going to be benched. So just put them down, people. Just put them down. 3 people on the team. That's it. The rest don't matter. Miami Dolphins 3-3. The Jacksonville Jaguars 1-6.
The Jags won, guys.
The Jags won.
I know.
Yay!
So good.
But we'll talk about Miami anyway. Play if you got him, Lamar Miller. Another solid performance from Lamar Miller. Last week, being the 13th highest scoring running back, and another double-digit showing. So Miller's not really showing any signs of slowing down, and he'll be facing a less than difficult line in the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. So I like him a lot. We're playing Lamar Miller. We're also playing Mike Wallace. This should be a no-brainer for you at this point. But I do want to bring to your attention that he has scored a touchdown in every single game except for one.
Wow.
That's impressive. Literally
Impressive.
every single game but one. I think it was in like week 2 or something.
Mhm.
It's crazy. You're playing Mike Wallace. He gets targeted in the end zone all the time. Dolphins defense. I also have them as a play if you've got him this week. Because, again, you're going up against the Jags. And the Dolphins were able to put up 12 points against the Bears last week. So think of how many points you might be able to put up against a team that gives literally the most points to defenses. It's time to get happy.
Yeesh.
Be able with the Dolphins defense. My gut call is Ryan Tannehill. So here's the deal. Tannehill's not even remotely a top quarterback in the league, but he put up 23 points against the Bears last week, which made him the 4th highest scoring quarterback. And in the last 3 weeks, he had 20 points, 17 points, and 23 points. And he's going to go up against the Jags, give up the 11th most points to quarterbacks. And this might be my prediction, but he might be the Russell Wilson of this year. He
Oh,
played fairly poorly in the first half of the season, but then his stats keep creeping him up and up and up, and all of a sudden, like the very last game of the year, he falls into like the top 10.
I'm into it. I like Tannehill this week. I say he's a must start.
He's on a hot streak right now.
Yeah,
And when
he's
the
a must
people-
start this week.
And again, it just so happens it's like right after talking about Russell Wilson, but literally last year Russell Wilson was not a top 10 play any week of the NFL except the last week when he cracked into the top 10 of overall points. It's just a fact. Might be Tannehill this year. It could be fun. We'll see. Charles Clay. I don't want people all hot and bothered about Charles Clay's 11 points last week. He did have the most yards of the season in his first touchdown, but I want to remind you of his other scores. 2, 3, 2, 3, bye, and 3. Not good. Not good, people. Now, Tannehill is getting hot, which will benefit Clay. But even with that, even with his points last week, he still doesn't even fall into the top 20 tight ends total points. So just drop it. Drop the Clay talk. And the bench is everybody else.
right. As far as the Jacksonville Jaguars are concerned, I'm going to tell a quick little story called the Toby Gerhart story, as told by Her Fantasy Football. He gets traded to the Jags. We're like, oh, cool, interesting. And then everyone loves him. And we go, well, I don't know if we love him. That's a little overrated. He falls in the ranks a little bit. So we're like, okay, quality. He's going to be a starter, sure. He starts. Jacksonville's terrible. We're like, ooh, this looks bad. And then he gets hurt. Oh, no. Then Bortles starts. And we're like, oh, okay, great. And then he gets hurt. And then we're like, And some people still have him on their team.
I thought where you're going to go with this, Brian, was let me tell you the Toby Gerhart story told by her fantasy football. The end.
That would have been better. Yeah. I feel for this guy, though. I feel like he never really got a chance, but like you got to let it go because this is a game. It's fantasy football. You need to get it done this week, and he is never your week. Okay. Denard Robinson, though, maybe pickup of the week. We have him ranked number 27, and Miami gives up the 11th most fantasy points to running backs. The problem is he still plays with Jacksonville Jaguars, and they have a terrible offensive line, and he's the only person who's been able to rush over 50 yards on the season on them. It's nuts.
Right.
56 yards was the best for Toby Gerhart. It's tough. But it's something to think about because he did it well against Cleveland, and they're not, well, they used to not be terrible. So, Duck calls. Allen Robinson is actually the best wide receiver on the team, and he is a borderline must start if you start 3 wide receivers and or a flex. So the thing is that he only, since week 1, he's been targeted at least 6 times. In PPR leagues, he is a must start, I think. Literally, you guys, I know this sounds crazy. No. Miami does give up the 6th fewest points to opposing wide receiver, but he's still a contender because he's always targeted every single game. A little silent sleeper for everyone. Clay Harbor is 16th tight end. He's had at least 3 catches every game that he's been in. For a tight end, I guess we have to pay attention. Cecil Shorts, I don't know. He only caught 3 passes for 12 yards last week, and he's so up and down.
No.
I think I would go to Allen Robinson. Blake Bortles is a no-go in the benchwarmers. Along with Storm Johnson and Jordan Todman, you can drop both of them if you thought that was a thing. Once again, Toby Gerhart, so sorry, my friend. And he's questionable and probably won't play anyway. And Alan Hearns, he's not quite Ogletree because he doesn't have a good team and he's not getting attention. He just is not someone you can play.
Bam. Love it. Houston Texans 3-4. The Tennessee Titans 2-5.
So I probably should have double-checked my notes after this one because for whatever reason, these 2 teams are both like 2 completely nondescript teams that I interchange with them all the time in my head.
Oh,
and I literally was writing the different players onto the wrong team write-ups. I had to do a little copy and paste action. So hopefully it will make this correct. But play if you got him, Arian Foster, obviously. He was the 11th highest scoring running back last week with 15 points, and he's the 3rd highest scoring running back overall this year. More exciting is he had another 20-plus touches game. So consistency, consistency, consistency. We love ourselves some Arian Foster. Gut calls. Hear me out. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I do want to make this clear. Do not play Ryan Fitzpatrick as your QB1 in a single QB league. I have him in the gut calls section if you are in a league where you can play a quarterback in your flex or in a 2-quarterback league. He's only had 1 game in which he did not score double-digit points, so he is a viable option in both of those 2 situations. Again, only in a flex or in a 2-quarterback league. Texans defense, I have my gut calls. So the Texans defense has not been as hot as usual lately, but they are still the 6th highest scoring defense, and they'll be going up against the Titans that give up the 10th most points to defenses. So you could have definitely, certainly an above average week with this. Benchwarmers, Alfred Blue. So Blue did look good last week. He scored 8 points. But I don't want you to fall prey to thinking this will be regular play. Why? Because he's on a team with Arian Foster, who gets 20-plus touches a game. The pure fact of the matter is Blue's just not going to get enough touches. He's just not to make him actually fantasy worthy.
Courtney loves this. That's when you make a heart symbol with your fingers.
I hope that's out of style before my kids get into school.
Are you hearting Alfred Blue?
The heart symbol? No, she's hearting me because I'm saying speed up.
Tennessee Titans. I've got Delaney Walker as your plan if you got him. He only scored 1 point last week, which is pretty terrible. But it's important to keep in mind that he's an end zone target, and he was targeting the end zone, and he should have had a touchdown last week. So that would have put him back in that 7-point range that we're used to. So stick with him. He's still your guy. Gut calls, Kendall Wright. Wright's been playing rather well the last few weeks, but the problem again we have is inconsistency. So let's run down his scoring thus far. 10. He started off with this really great week, which made us really excited that Kendall Wright's back. He's going to play really well. Or not, because then he scored 3 points, 4 points, 3 points. Then he scores another 20-point game. We're like, oh, yeah, he's back on. Just kidding. Next week we'll follow up with a 0. And then once you're like, screw him, I'm over it, he does a 12. I'm over you, Kendall Wright. I'm over you.
Might as well be a Patriot.
Seriously, you cannot consider him for anything more than a wide receiver 3 or a flex role. You can't because of his inconsistency. Because literally, he will either get you major points or nothing more than like 4. That's what you have to deal with. So keep that in mind. It's your choice. Only knew how desperate you are. Bench, Justin Hunter, that's a given. And then Derek Hagan. Yes, he had a nice week last week, scoring 38-yard touchdown. But don't let it cloud the fact the guy's only had 3 catches all season long. So. And he plays on a team with a subpar offense, so you need to drop. Don't go thinking about picking him up either.
Bam. Baltimore Ravens 5-2 against the Cincinnati Bengals 3-2-1. Man, the Bengals are falling apart.
The tie killed them.
Falling apart. Yeah, losing AJ Green just like destroyed them. So go Baltimore. We got Joe Flacco ranked 10th. Although Flacco is not the most consistent quarterback, he has a nice matchup, lots of weapons. The Ravens look good. He feels good. I'm into him. I think he's going to have a great week this Sunday, so I'm into it. Steve Smith Sr., Mr. Triple S Sauce. Bam, 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 bam.
Into that point in the show, people.
I know he's had 2 bad games in the last 3 weeks, but I think it's going to be a boom week for him. I think he's going to come back. He had 118 yards and a touchdown last week of the first week of the season when they played Cincinnati. So, I mean, hey, can't bench a guy who had those stats but 7 weeks ago. Justin Forsett. He was so close to getting into double digits, so close, but Bernard stole that little touchdown. That's going to be a problem in Baltimore, but Forsett is still a key runner. He runs. That's how he gets you your points, and he gets the yards. That's all I got to say. So Forsett's in. Owen Daniels had a nice game last week of 58 yards and a touchdown, his first touchdown since week 2. But he saw a season high of 9 targets, which is really good for him. They're really putting him into the offense. And the Bengals give up the most points to tight ends, so he's a start. I've got gut calls. I've got Torrey Smith. He rebounded nicely with 3 games over 10 fantasy points. So that's great. Unfortunately, I wouldn't trust him this week. He only put up 5 points in week 1 against Cincinnati, and Cincinnati gives up the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So it's not my favorite matchup. Bench warmers, really, everyone else, I suppose. Except Justin Tucker, of course. But Cincinnati Bengals, play him if you got him. None. They really need A.J. Green back, and he may be back, but there's no guarantees on that. You're going to have to watch the injury report. It's kind of sad. Bernard got beat up last week with some sore ribs. He has been sitting out of practice and appears he's going to play on Sunday against the Ravens, but the Ravens give up the 2nd fewest points to running backs, so if Cincinnati decides to hold him out, it wouldn't surprise me. Expect Jeremy Hill to be the one that's going to get the touches and more time, so he might be a nice flex option, but even then, it's going to be a tough game for both of them. And again, A.J. Green is under gut calls because he's literally a gut call for Cincinnati. He may or may not play. If he does play, everybody's value on Cincinnati goes up, including Sanu, who's the number 1 wide receiver right now in replace of Green. But I love him as a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver even more than I do number 1 because he's going to be able to get open. He's going to be going against the 2nd best corners, and I like him regardless. He is. The Ravens give up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So either way, I think he should be in your lineup. But I really like him if Green plays. And
Carson asked me if he should drop Sanu, and I was like, no. Everyone in Cincinnati was terrible.
No, Sanu
he couldn't have done anything better.
Right, absolutely. And Sanu had great points when Green was in. Like, he was a very effective, wide receiver too for Cincinnati. I love him. He's a tough wide receiver. I would keep him in and I would play him. Benchwarmer's Andy Dalton,
Ouch.
not 2013, no more. We have the St. Louis Rams 2-4 at Kansas City Chiefs 3-3.
No point spent a lot of time on teams with that kind of record, so we'll make it quick. So, play if you got him, none. Got calls Lance Kendrick. So what's interesting about him, he's actually been playing pretty well recently.
Yeah.
He scored 8 points in week 3, had a bit of a blip in week 5, but then he scored 8 points and 7 points. So this could be another decent week for him as the Chiefs give up the 7th most points at tight ends. So he's actually on the hotter streak of the tight ends. So someone to think about. Trey Mason, this one's really interesting news as well. It appears that he has kind of usurped Zach Stacy and is the man in town. What I like about it is that he had 18 carries last week for 85 yards, so he's staying a really heavy workload, which is good. I have in the gut call section purely for the fact that, the Rams have not been really great about actually naming a starter and sticking with it. So I feel like you need to actually see a second week of him actually getting that kind of production to feel really well that he's actually the starter. Bench, all Rams wide receivers. Let's put it this way. The highest scoring receiver last week was Stedman Bailey with 6 points. No one knows who he is. No one needs to know who he is. Brian Quick, who's their top receiver, only scored 3 points. It's a very, very sad situation in St. Louis. We're all on the bench. Same with Austin Davis, who was pretty hot, actually, in week 3 and then in week 5 when he came off his bye. But then he's just been kind of like okay since then. So, again, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you think about him. But otherwise, he's on your bench because the Chiefs give up the 11th fewest points. So not a good matchup for him. On to the Chiefs. Jamal Charles, you are playing him. I know he burned you a bit at the beginning of the season, but he's back in the groove of things. He was the 10th highest scoring running back last week with 16 points. The Rams do have a pretty good, line. They give up the 5th fewest points. But Charles is, he's Charles. You gotta play him.
He's
and
Charles.
Then, Nile Davis.
Charles is in charge.
Yeah, Charles is in charge. Nile Davis is not in charge, sadly. So he's been pretty non-existent since Jamal came back. But he did have 10 touches last week, which means he's actually still getting some sort of production. Granted, he only got you 25 yards, but at least he's seeing some action. So if you have to roll the dice on a really deep, crazy pick, he's not a terrible option just for the fact that he gets the touches, but I think you get better options just due to the Rams' tough line. Bench, Travis Kelce. He's a really talented tight end, but he got you 3 points last week, and the Rams gave up the 10th fewest points to tight ends. So this is not the week you're looking for the bounce back, and he's injured. He's limited in practice due to ribs. So this is not the week.
Bummer. Philadelphia Eagles 5-1 at the Arizona Cardinals. 5-1 game of the week.
It's a good one.
This is going to be a good one. Big fan. So Philadelphia Eagles are coming off of a bye, and Chip Kelly is crazy. So who knows what he cooked up in this bye week with the extra time. So it is a little bit of a wild card game. So I'm very excited to see what happens. Play him if you got him. I'm putting LeSean McCoy back here with some hesitation. But week 6 was glorious. He's back to his 20-plus carries. He rushed for over 100 yards for the first time this season. Yeah, you heard that right. But now he goes up against the Cardinals to give the 4th fewest points to opposing running backs. So I'm not saying he's going to be terrible again, but it may not be the same. Jeremy Maclin, listen, he scored a touchdown in 4 out of his 6 games this season. He wasn't needed in week 6 because they just blew out the Giants. So they just kind of kept the ball and just ran out the clock. It was bizarre. It was a bizarre game in week 6, and then they had a bye. So don't worry about it. He's back. Gut calls, Nick Foles, he just has not been very good. Let's just put it out there. He went from rarely throwing an interception to being an interception nightmare. Believe it or not, the Cardinals are an okay matchup. They give up the 14th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So he's not really a starter unless the matchup is awesome, and this one's just kind of okay. So he's ranked number 16 for us, and I think that's probably about right. Darren Sproles, we have him ranked number 40. It's a bad matchup because they don't give up a lot of points to running backs. And he's getting a third of the carries that LeSean McCoy is getting. So that's that. Jordan Matthews and Riley Cooper, I don't know why he's still on people's teams. Jordan Matthews, I guess you have some sort of victory. Do you know that Riley Cooper's owned in 78.1% of ESPN leagues? I want you to think about that tonight when you're laying in bed. And Eagles defense, listen, we have them ranked number 17. They might be better than this because they have been amazing. They've had no fewer than 4 sacks in a game in the last 3 weeks. That's right. For 3 weeks, they've had over 4 sacks. It's crazy. So I don't know. I'm not hating them. I don't even want to talk about Zach Ertz. It's too confusing.
It is too confusing. It is. The Cardinals, Carson Palmer, matchup alert. I had like triple and double check, like a quadruple, kept going on the internet, finding different sites to make sure that I put him in the right place at Play Him If You Got Him. I was like, it just seems weird. Whatever. But the Eagles give up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and that's just a fact. But Palmer has yet to have a game over 20 points since returning from his shoulder injury, so that's a fact. But he does have 3 wide receivers to throw the ball to, so that's good, and a running back that he can rely on. So I guess we're starting him in Week 8. I guess that's what's going down. Andre Ellington, he's at 100%. He's working through some sore ribs, but he'll be working through the injury. So, we're going to put him in. The Cardinals get the 6th win against the Eagles. I have this feeling. I just feel it. And then I feel like the Cardinals are going to win. And Floyd, I know, for the first time this year, had 2 good games in a row. It wasn't boom or bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. He did it. Woo!
Congrats.
And the Eagles give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So we're going to play him. I'll take 11 points. Larry Fitzgerald, you did what I thought you were going to do. And that's, you were a bust.
Not
much. Sad. Not much. 4 receptions, 21 yards. That stinks. But I don't understand how people feel about him. They're going to play him regardless. That's you. That's not me. John Carlson, you want to talk about...
That's on you.
Who owns Carlson? No one. 0% in Yahoo leagues and 0.2% in ESPN leagues. That makes me giggle. Sorry. I don't know why, but it does.
He gets some looks, though.
No,
Not
he's
many,
really bad.
but some.
I guess we know where the area of opportunity is for the Cardinals this offseason. Indianapolis Colts 5-2 at Pittsburgh Steelers 4-3. Yeah, the Colts, play them if you got them. Play them all. Why not? Hey, it's a good week. Sure. Luck, 3rd-ranked cornerback. Obviously, we're gonna play him. Ahmad Bradshaw. This could be his huge week for Bradshaw. I'm just saying. I just feel it. Richardson went down last week against the Bengals. His list is questionable. And Pittsburgh isn't the best stopping the run, so Bradshaw could have a big, big week. T.Y. Hilton, we have him ranked 7th, has 3rd game of the season over 100 yards. And, he's really starting to get into his groove. And Luck loves throwing him the ball, so he also loves throwing the ball to Dwayne Allen. Hey, 5th touchdown of the season last week. Talk about a tight end. And he's only owned in 32% of leagues. And he's the 7th highest fantasy scorer for tight ends. Pick him up for people. Pick him up. For God's sake. I don't understand. Pick him up and play him. So frustrating. Sorry.
If we had a team of like NFL rejects, like Anton Smith and Dwayne Allen and whatnot, we'd probably win our league.
Yes.
People that teams, for whatever reason, illogically won't play.
Except Smith got 1 point. That hurt us last week.
Yeah.
Trent Richardson's questionable. He's not my favorite play this week. And poor Reggie Wayne. Ugh. Everybody still has him ranked super high, and I just can't understand.
I don't either.
He's had 1 game with one touchdown and 1 game over 100 yards, and I just couldn't do it. I bumped him down to 40th, and I felt like that was still too high. Bench warmers, nobody. It's the Colts people.
I agree.
On to the Steelers. Play it if you got him. Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is the man. And if you don't know that, I feel sorry for you. I do, because he's yet to have a single game with less than 84 yards. That was his lowest scoring game, was an 84-yard game, and 8 points is the lowest he's ever had. Everyone else is the double digits. He's the man, pure and simple. I adore him. Le'Veon Bell, he's averaging 14 points per game. He's the 4th highest scoring running back in the league right now. He's only gotten you 1 single-digit game all season. That was in week 2. He's been killing it ever since. And, his most endearing quality is that he is, really good in terms of rushing, and he also is a really good receiving back. So it really doesn't matter what kind of defenses are going to throw at him because he's just the man and can do it all. Love him. Gut calls, Lance Moore. This one's really interesting. If you've been playing fantasy football for a while, you probably have a love-hate relationship with Lance Moore. I get it. You should. And what's really tricky here is that he's played pretty well the last 2 weeks. So last week, was his most week, and he only had 2 catches, but he has, he scored a touchdown in the last 2 games. So what's weird is he only gets part in the game and targeted in the red zone. Literally, that's it. But Big Ben seems to always find him in the end zone. It's probably because Antonio Brown's being double teamed. So if you need a flyer, Lance Moore might be worth it because for whatever reason they're on a pattern of throwing him the ball in the end zone.
He's this year's Kachuri.
Yeah, seriously, he's a touchdown vulture right now. It's weird. Bench everybody else.
Everybody else. Sad day McStevens here. We got the Oakland Raiders 0-6 against the Cleveland Browns 3-3. Game of the week.
I was going to say that.
Play him if you got him. Nobody. Gut calls Darren McFadden, and I am gonna put him really in play him if you got him. I just really can't because it's the Oakland Raiders, but he's gonna have a good game, guys. Cleveland gives up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. He is clearly the primary running back there in Oakland. I like him. I like him a lot this week. I'm saying play him and feel good about it as your flex guy, guys. Let's go, Darren. Got it. I also have Andre Holmes and James Jones in got calls, but really they deserve to be on the bench. They are so boomer bust. I mean, last week they should have been fantasy gold, and they both got 3.5 fantasy points.
Oh, sad.
So, I mean, really, you cannot rely on anything that involves passing. So, therefore, Derek Carr is also on the bench. He's not a reliable fantasy. Has no fantasy worth of any sorts. And the Oakland's defense, they're really bad. The Oakland's offense is bad, but their defense is really bad. So before Brandon gets into our Cleveland Browns spiel, I say play them all. Play all the Browns.
That's interesting because they were not playable against the Jaguars, so I don't know where you're getting this confidence. But I respect you. They were terrible against Jacksonville. Implosion.
The best game the Oakland defense had was in week 1 against the Jets, with 7 fantasy points. That was it. That's all she wrote.
Implosion is the only word that you can use for the Cleveland Browns against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
But
so
every
obviously,
team has an implosion game.
Yeah, well, I just talked about the Bears doing it too, so I'm not pointing fingers. It's what happened. They were listening to their own press. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ooh, we are really good. So, to be fair, the Jags did come out to play.
The Jags played well. They played really well. And the Jags have had some close games this year.
They're the best worst team out there. They really are.
They really are. They just can't keep people healthy, really.
Yeah.
So, speaking of
Toby Gerhart to come back.
Speaking of Ben Tate. Okay.
He's in your plan.
It hurts me to love you.
So here's the deal. Last week, I knew that their center, Alex Mack, Pro Bowl center, was out for the season. Okay, he was put on IR with a broken fibula. I knew that was a big deal, but I didn't think it would be as big of a deal as it seems to be because the Jacksonville Jaguars handed their booty to them on a platter. It was disturbing.
Tate got me 3 points.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll get it together because Tate was awesome before his injury and then the 2 games after his injury. So I believe that they're going to come back. The Raiders give up the 2nd most points to running backs. So look for a comeback. Fingers crossed. Eek. And also he's listed as probable with a finger injury. He should be fine, but just keep an eye out. He's my only play if you got him, though. In the gut calls section, though, Andrew Hawkins finally had a comeback, caught 5 passes for 112 yards. And then Miles Austin was the 2nd highest fantasy scorer on the Browns with 3 catches for 53 yards. That tells you anything. But neither of these guys are definitely must-starts, but they're interesting. if that's a thing, because the Raiders give up the 10th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Can you believe it? And we're
No.
saying the defense is bad, but they hold wide receivers, so I don't know. They're in the gut calls right now. Jordan Cameron, he caught one pass for 5 yards last week, and he's just breaking my heart. I have nothing else to say about him. He and Zach Ertz, I can't talk about you this week. I'm not emotionally stable enough for that. Cleveland Browns defense, number 10 ranked defense because they're going up against the Raiders, although they weren't great against Jacksonville, but they did get 2 sacks and 3 interceptions on Jacksonville, so... benchwarmers Hoyer, West, Travis. I can never say his name. I'm so sorry. Benjamin. Don't do it. Moving on.
Don't do it. Bam. Green Bay Packers 5-2 and New Orleans Saints 2-4.
Great. Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers just quietly being Aaron Rodgers this year. He scored at least three touchdowns in 5 of his 7 games. Rocking it.
Love it.
Take it. Decent.
So Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, we have them ranked number 1 and number 6. This sounds
They
crazy.
should be 1 and 2. They're just dynamite together.
They are both up for fantasy MVP this year.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. And sometimes we don't talk enough about the really great people so that you know the difference between really great and pretty good. But these guys are really, really great. So
Really
Nelson
great.
has at least 4 catches in every game. Also, he's scored a touchdown in 5 of his 7 games. Cobb has scored a touchdown in all but 1 game and has at least 3 catches in every game. Gold. Do it.
Gold.
Eddie Lacy, you know how I feel about him. He had 12 carries last week. James Starks had 7. If you're not nervous, I don't know what stat lines you're looking at. The only thing that's going to save him this week is that the Saints give up the 9th most points to running backs, and James Starks is hurt. He'll probably still play, but he won't play in the same amount.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, trade bait. Speaking of, got calls, James Starks, he's someone to think about. And Devontae Adams continues to be kind of awesome.
Yeah,
And you think
not
there's
kind
no
of.
room for a third guy here, but there is. So last week he caught only 1 pass, but it was 21 yards and a touchdown. For flex, that's pretty nice.
Nice.
And the week before he caught 6 passes for 77 yards, so he's part of the game plan. Bench warmers, I just had to put someone on the bench, so I'm putting Andrew Corliss, their tight end, on the bench, but you knew that. Saints. So Drew Brees is coming back, okay? Last week, he threw for 342 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception. But the Lions are really tough, so that's very impressive.
Very
so feel
good.
free to start him this week. Got calls. That's right. I ranked Jimmy Graham number 13. And I ranked him that way because I have a rule that if someone zeroes out, you can put them on your bench. And that includes Jimmy Graham because I don't think he's healthy yet. And until I see an injury report that says, A-OK, Jimmy Graham, yeah, he's so happy,
Decoy.
decoy mode.
That
I'm
was a
very nervous.
Belichick move, and I was angry.
Right? Because there's all this press. Like, oh, he's playing.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you're like, well, if he's playing, I have to play him. Nope.
Fantasy
Decoy.
Agreed. Also, fantasy nightmare. The rest of the Saints. I'm
All
gonna
of them.
do a quick rundown because people always ask, because I feel like the Saints are the team that we told everyone not to draft, and the people didn't start listening to our show early enough to know not to do this to themselves. So out of respect for them, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown, but you know how I feel. So Mark Ingram, Kyrie Robinson, and Tavares Cadet. That's right. We have another head in the monster. First of all, let's say, just so that you know, Pierre Thomas is out for 2 to 3 weeks with ribs and a shoulder injury.
Yep.
So there's that. Kyrie Robinson sat out practice on Wednesday with a forearm injury, and add to that the fact that last week he got benched for 2 quarters early in the game because he fumbled. Can't feel great about that. Mark Ingram was less than impressive his first week back. Now they went up against the Lions, so they could have been trying to ease him in, but eh. And then Tavares Cadet, well, I mean, he seems okay every once in a while, but technically the highest scoring running back from last week was a guy named Austin Johnson. That guy. That's right. I turn that at my television all the time on Sundays. That guy? That guy. Anyway.
There's
who
nothing
would
more
want to do
frustrating when the guy scores a touchdown that you know nobody owns. And it's like, why'd
man.
you just do that?
Adam Rank on the NFL Network. Shout out to Adam. We love you. they do this segment that helps no one, and I'm like, and my husband and I just scream that at the screen every single time that one of those jerks catches the ball in the end zone. Just pisses me off.
Irate. Makes you
And
irate.
speaking of jerks, we didn't even rank him, but Kenny Stills came out of nowhere last week. What's up?
I know, but he won't show up next week. It's
Of course
clockwork.
not.
I thought he was injured. I thought he was out. No?
Oh, is he out?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he's just questionable like he has been all year.
You guys, I can't handle any of these people anymore.
No.
I literally don't even look at them anymore. It drives me crazy. Kenny Stills is the invisible man all season, and then he comes out with 5 passes for 103 yards and a touchdown. Marcus Colston's probably your best bet because 4 out of his 6 games he's had at least 3 catches and 50 yards, but he's only scored 1 touchdown. So who wants only 5 points? Brandon
Seriously.
Cooks is literally every other week. Literally every other week. The good news is that this is supposedly his week. So that's the insider info for you. But this is why I don't draft these people.
We get probably more questions about Brandon Cooks than any other player.
Cooks and Sankey.
It's tough. It's tough.
And I will say, we told you not to draft any Saints players. Because you go through this every week and you're like, do I play him? Do I play him?
Reason Grammar it.
Well, hopefully you didn't draft any of the Redskins either. We got the Washington Redskins 2-5, the Dallas Cowboys 6-1.
This will be an interesting game because it's a divisional matchup, which always makes it interesting. So, play if you got him. None. Everybody's in my gut call section. Alfred Morris, he's a little bit injured, but he came back in the game, but watch out for that. Deshaun Jackson, he had a terrible game, but, at one point I literally had to double check to make sure he was still playing. Like, seriously. I was like, what's going on? He only scored you 4 points off 49 yards. And we got McCoy as a quarterback now, so let's enter the third-string quarterback. That's always exciting, right? No. And he's expected to start week 8, so whether that's good news or bad news, we don't know. But you got to hope that McCoy gets a bit more comfortable with the deep ball threat or Jackson's value extremely decreases. Inversely, we've got Pierre Garçon, who apparently benefited with McCoy's entrance into the game. Garçon had 87 yards and a touchdown off 5 catches, but you need to keep in mind that of that 87 yards, 70 yards was off one play, which was a short little dump-off pass, and he scored a touchdown. So, that has to be what McCoy's a little bit more, comfortable with. Yeah, it's crazy. But if you don't have that, then you've got, again, another completely useless game from Pierre Garçon. And the Cowboys' defense gives up the 5th fewest points to wideouts, so that also does not look promising.
Because they're terrible, right, guys?
Right. Really bad.
And then there's Jordan Reed, guys. I'm sorry. Niles, Paul, why are you still getting in my way? You're getting in my way. Reed had 5 catches for 54 yards and scored you 5 points. Paul had 2 catches for 58 yards and scored you 5 points. So Reed is getting the most looks, but Paul is sitting there and eating into it, into his catches. So that's also not encouraging. There's other guys out there like Allen. Go pick them up instead of Reed, and everybody else is on my bench.
Bench him. The Dallas Cowboys, you're going to play them all. Hey, Romo, nice matchup against Washington to give them the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I'm into him. He's not a must-start every week, but he's a must-start this week. DeMarco Murray, 100 yards every game this year, which sets an NFL record. He is a machine. You're going to play him. I know he came out and he was a little with his ankles, but whatever. As long as he's playing, you're playing him.
I love
Same with
him.
Dez. I love him. He's just such a wonderful 2014 surprise. I'm into his moves. Dez had 15 fantasy points without a touchdown last week. Okay, must start. In my gut calls, I have Terrence Williams, and the only reason why he's a gut call for me is because for some reason the Cowboys will not throw him the ball. It's crazy. He has seen 2 or 3 targets a game, and yet he's getting 7 fantasy points every game or more. So he's in your lineup, guys. He has 6 touchdowns on the season. I'm all about him. All about him.
I like touchdowns.
And on my bench, Jason Witten. I can't do it. I can't. Witten has had 1 touchdown this season and has yet to break 9 fantasy points. And he is the 15th ranked tight end in fantasy football. Stop. Just stop. I can't. And that's week 8 for us, you guys. Hopefully you have a wonderful fantasy league, unless you're playing one of us, and then we hope you're going down. Make sure to hop over to herfantasyfootball.com and check out our rankings, and also chat us up on Twitter at herfantasyfb. Until next time, no more faking it.